Hey, everybody, I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a very interesting discussion. It was almost a year ago that COVID-19 turned our world upside down. I believe that our last church service was the first or maybe the second Sunday in March. Man, it's been a long time since I've seen y'all. But our as the whole virus began to unfold and so many things, so many issues were there surrounding this virus, we felt it was best for us at this point to just keep everybody tucked away, home, safe, and knowing that at some point there would be a vaccine that would come. And I am happy tonight to say that there is a vaccine. I have a wonderful team that has assembled with me tonight. And let me just say, number one, my goal is not at all to try to convince you to take this vaccine, but my goal is to help inform you. And I've got some wonderful people that are here tonight that are joining me. I am very grateful to have Pastor Travis Simons and Pastor Chris Baker and Pastor Joseph Anthony, who are all a part of the Potter's House of North Dallas. I am also excited tonight to have these two wonderful ladies right here with us. Jennu Phillips, she is with us tonight. She has served as a nurse for over 20 years. She is currently working as a nurse practitioner, part-time, and a clinical nurse leader full-time. She's with the Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas. She's been on the front lines through this entire pandemic, and she's with us tonight. Also grateful to have Tanisha Ellis with us tonight. Tanisha has 15 years in nursing experience. She has a background in critical care, emergency services, cardiovascular services, and she is currently in surgical services at HCA Healthcare. She too has been on the front lines, and we've had some prayer times with all of these people that are from our church. I'm like, Lord, cover all these people that have just put it on every day and walked into the hospital and really helped be a part of sustaining life wherever they could find it. And so I'm grateful for you ladies with us tonight. Thank you for being here. You'll hear from them in just a few moments. I'm also excited tonight because we are blessed to have Dr. Robert Drummond with us tonight. What an awesome man. I've been following him on social media. I've kind of been stalking him on social media, actually. I love listening to him talk and the way that he has a way of just connecting with people through this pandemic. He can take like just the most complicated thing and break it down so that those that really want to understand can understand. And Dr. Drummond, he's attended Morehouse College in Atlanta. He graduating with a BS in biology. He attended the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine in Baltimore, where he received both his MD and a PhD in cellular and molecular medicine. Dr. Drummond finalized his training with a postdoctoral research fellowship in hematology at UCLA, hematology. And he is now this I was shocked to read, but he's a former captain in the California U.S. Army National Guard. He currently, right now, is both the lead physician and the director of laboratories at the Montebello Urgent Care Center with Optum. And I am so excited to have you with us, Dr. Drummond. I want to just ask you tonight just to feel free and talk to us. We have an incredible audience that's viewing us tonight. And I think that a lot of people are concerned. We've been concerned about the COVID-19 whole situation. And now we have a lot of people who are concerned about this vaccine. They want their freedom back. They want to be able to get back to work, worship, school, all of those things, but they're concerned about the vaccine. And so thank you again for being here with us tonight. And will you just talk to us maybe and help us dispel some of the myths that might be associated with this vaccine?
Okay. Well, thank you so much. First, I want to just say thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be able to try to shed a little bit of light and during these potentially at times dark times. So the first thing I like to tell everyone when it comes to the vaccine is there are multiple vaccines, right? There are over 24 vaccines in development at different stages throughout the world. I believe the last that I checked as of last month, there were about 52 vaccines in development. So here in America, the major vaccines that you're going to hear about, right? So let's start with the two that are available, Moderna and Pfizer. Those are the ones that I think most of the individuals were a little afraid of because they're new. They're new technology. They use what we call modified synthetic mRNA, which is basically if the body and humans, our natural building block for our genome that tells every cell what to do, tells every protein how to function. For us, our natural genome is DNA. For this virus, it's RNA. Now that RNA is just a genetic code, Ds, As, Ts, Cs, but basically it's a long strip. So what these scientists have done is taken that long strip, taken a small piece of it that codes for one protein that's on the outside of the virus. So that small strip, it basically, they take it, they put it inside of a bunch of lipids, which are basically like fats. They deliver it to the body. That gets into the cells, and then our cells start to make the actual spike protein. And when it does that, it goes, and our body's like, wait a second, that's not something that I normally make. I'm going to make antibodies towards that because I don't think that needs to be here. So this technology is using our own bodies to make the protein, and then our antibodies will basically, we make antibodies towards that protein, this foreign protein. So it's new technology, but it has been in development for 30 years, going all the way back to 1990, Dr. Carrico. And it's actually a phenomenal story of a Hungarian-born scientist that worked here in the USA that spent over a decade trying to perfect this, to the point where she got demoted in her job. She was almost fired from her job because she believed in this idea of being able to take this RNA and introduce it to cells and tell the cell what to do. Then she partnered with someone else, and they were able to come together and figure this out. That process did not happen overnight. It took 15 years. So that's the first thing I really try to make sure I get everyone to understand. Because if you say, hey, I've got this new technology I want to try out. I know your virus just came in March. I'm ready in April. I'm ready to go with this new technology. I would be the first one to say, that's something's wrong there. But they started working on this in 1990. They kind of, I would say, made the major breakthrough in 2005, 15 years. And then another 5 years went by, and they basically, a number of scientists got together. They decided to come up with a company to try to basically take this whole idea of using synthetic RNA and to put it in a form that could be delivered to patients. And they called that company Moderna, which stands for MOD, modified RNA. That's where Moderna comes from. And that was 2010. And then they've not brought a single thing to market because they've been working and perfecting this for the last decade. So we're talking about 30 years of work that has come about. They've been working on it, perfecting this. And there are a lot of people along the way. This isn't just one company. These are thousands of scientists that have been working on this. And so the first time that it was basically said, you know what, we're going to give it a go in terms of starting in clinical trials was with SARS coronavirus 2. So this technology is only 2 of the 52 vaccines that are being developed. So I have to make sure I try to break that down. When we say vaccine, we're talking about 52 vaccines. 2 of them are using this synthetic modified RNA technology to create immunity towards the spike protein. Okay, so that's just want to start by breaking down that, because that really gives a lot of, I think, background and understanding, and hopefully starts the process to alleviate the fear when it comes to these vaccines.
Absolutely, because people feel like it happened overnight, and that's, that's what scares people. But to hear you say that this has been in the making for years, I mean, That's awesome to me. Travis, would you you want to ask Dr. Drummond a question here?
Dr. Drummond, thank you for sharing. Um, I mean, really just kind of debunking some of the myths that are out there. I had a quick question. If social distancing and wearing a mask prevents COVID-19 virus, why is there a need for the vaccine?
Good question. I'd like to start by saying I'm very particular about my syntax when I describe things. So what I would first start off by saying is that wearing a mask, social distancing, it doesn't prevent, it reduces, right? So it reduces the likelihood of spread. That is what we're trying to do when we say wash your hands, wear a mask, and socially distance. So it won't eliminate SARS coronavirus 2 from being around, but it will reduce the likelihood of spread. But when it comes to something, a virus like SARS coronavirus 2, that has the infectivity that it has, we call it the R naught in the science world, but it has the ability to infect as many people as it does, and each person can infect X number of people. When it comes to a virus like that, the only way that you will reach what we call herd immunity to control it is a combination of infection and vaccination. We've never reached herd immunity to any of these viruses without a combination of infection and herd immunity. And before we had vaccines, we had the Spanish flu, and we saw how many people that wiped out of the earth. So natural infection for a virus that, as of now, we say it has a 1% to 2% mortality rate, you're talking about eventually within 18 to 24 months, every single person, man, woman, and child on earth will have seen this virus. We can't afford to lose 2% of them.
Wow. Wow.
That's good.
That's so true. T, you have taken the vaccine. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, yes. So I received the Pfizer vaccine, and first dose was on December 21st. Simple process. You go in, you take your vaccine, they observe you for 15 minutes after, and I had no reactions whatsoever from my vaccine. Second day, I had a little arm soreness, but that's about it. Third day, I had no soreness at all. Second vaccine was just this past Monday on January the 11th. Same experience. I had a slight headache and some abdominal back cramping. But other than that, I had a great experience with my vaccine. No fever, no headache, no chills, which is common with the second dose. We're seeing that more commonly in the second dose, but overall, a great experience.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. So you did not have to take this vaccine.
No, it is a voluntary vaccine to take. It's not mandatory at our healthcare system. And we are seeing that some of the nurses are a little hesitant to take it. But we are seeing now that other nurses are coming back now saying they do want it. Other physicians are changing their mind. I think they wanted to see other people get the vaccine first. Yeah. So we have seen a change of heart, which is great because we do believe that this is what's going to help us get back to normal life or pre-COVID life.
That's great. So tell me, I know that you, in the early days of the pandemic, you've seen a whole lot happen in the hospital. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. I've been around for Ebola, Zika, swine flu. I've never seen something like this in my career. So for me, it was heartbreaking to witness what we were witnessing, to see the healthcare system overwhelmed by the patient population, to run out of bed capacity, to overflow into units that you normally didn't use as an inpatient unit, to watch family members pass away alone. I think for me, that was the hardest thing for me is to, when you're in the hospital, most of the time you have your family with you. Family's important. They help you get through a difficult time, but you couldn't have family, you couldn't have visitors. So we became those patients' families. We held their hands, we stayed in the rooms with them, we prayed with them. We did all those things that normally you would do with your family. So it's been difficult. We are exhausted, but we're hopeful. we finally feel like we have a little bit of hope with the vaccine. And what I'm learning is it's going to take all of us to get past this. It's going to take all of us to do our own research about the vaccine and have panels like this to get educated so that we are getting the correct information to make an informed decision.
Yes, that's great. What about you, Janu?
Yes, so with the vaccine experience, the first dose, I didn't have any, just like Tanisha said, just a little bit soreness the next day went away. But with the second dose, I got really, I got the side effects. I was, 12 hours after I got the shot, I had chills, I had slight temperature, really bad body aches. So I've been just taking Tylenol, Motrin around the clock. And so it lasted about 20 hours and then it went away. And then the next morning I was back to normal, like nothing happened. So wow. Yeah, so it was, I got a little scared. I was like, am I really, because I felt it, but it went back to normal and I'm really glad. Yeah. As far as the hospital experience, it's been, my unit started as a COVID unit from the beginning in March, and we slowly expanded, to other units. And then we slowly closed down all the COVID units. And then in the fall, we opened up more beds and we found beds where units were already shut down. Our major problem is still staffing. We can make physically beds, it's possible to open up beds, put a bed somewhere, but the staffing is still an issue. We don't have phlebotomists, lab staff who draw the labs, therapists, respiratory therapists, physicians, nurses. We have had a lot of help from state and federal staffing resources where nurses work 6 days in a row, 6 nights in a row. And that's how their contract is, because we don't have enough staffing. I usually don't work bedside, but I was pulled out to do bedside. I was working night shifts for a while, had an accident, so I had to stop doing that. So, it's been a lot of tension, and, we can't even really talk with each other at work. I mean, we can talk, but we have to socially distance. We cannot have more than 2 people at a time in a break room, things like that. So it's been kind of tough, but, we're used to it now, kind of. So walking through it, hoping that everybody will get vaccinated and we can get over this.
Wow, yes. And Dr. Drummond, I know you're in LA, so you all are on the news every day. Huh. I mean, every day. What is happening in LA?
LA right now looks like New York in the beginning part of the pandemic. And I have to be honest, we don't understand why. If you remember, LA was the first to shut down. California was the first to shut down. We stayed shut down the longest. We were the last to reopen. We reopened at half capacity. Even right now, no restaurants aren't open. You can't eat indoors, outdoors. There's not a single restaurant open. And we're still seeing the numbers. And we don't understand why that is. I can tell you that just this morning, I had a patient that walked into my urgent care center, drove himself with an oxygen saturation of 41%. He walked into the urgent care center with an oxygen saturation of 41%. For the nurses that are here, they know exactly what he looked like when he walked in. Breathing at a rate of about 65 breaths per minute. Wow. And I'll be honest, I don't think he's going to make it. This isn't the first person to walk in this way. And this is an urgent care. This is not an emergency room. So there's nothing we can do but get him over to the emergency room. What Tanisha and Gino are seeing is they're seeing the continued, what happens when they leave my site and get to their sites. And it's I've never said, as they've said, I'm just repeating what they've said. I've never said anything like this. We have, just as they had in New York, we have tractor trailers parked outside of hospitals where they're just dumping bodies. There's no burial. It's just, okay, another person passed away, put him in the body, in the trailer, in the freezer, and keep going. I've never seen anything. It's like a bad movie, but it's reality.
And it still blows my mind that some people think this virus is not even real. and how people can think that is really beyond me. I don't comprehend. I guess because I see people I genuinely know that are working in this every day. We've lost people in our church from it. And for whatever reason, that if you're watching us tonight and you think, well, this virus is not real, let me tell you, it is very real. It is very dangerous. It is a novel virus. And so I guess that's what's kind of got a lot of people, it's got me like, I'm looking at somebody today who passed away, who was young in their 30s. And then you hear somebody in their 90s that survives COVID-19. And I think that kind of the distance between those two extremes is amazing, and I don't understand why.
Can I make a statement, if I could, Pastor Brady?
Please.
This is why it's been so important for me to do what I've been doing. I want to touch on exactly what you said, because what you see in the misinformation that's out are people that speak in partial truths, half truths, full truths, mix them together. It all sounds believable. So I had this conversation an hour ago with someone on my Instagram page trying to break this down. SARS coronavirus 2 is the 7th species of coronavirus that we've seen. The first 4 species cause the common cold. We see them every day. We get past them. But when species 5 arrived, it caused SARS in 2003. That had an 18% mortality rate, but only 8,000 people were affected. When when the coronavirus 6 arrived, it caused MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. That was in 2013. That had a 33% mortality rate. So this is what we've seen. So now this is the 7th coronavirus. That's what SARS-CoV-2 is. It's the 7th coronavirus, because the misinformation will say, oh, coronavirus has been around forever. COVID's been around forever. It's killed, but with Lysol, why is it so bad? This is just another virus. It's not. We've never seen a virus that has 2 to 14-day incubation period. We've never seen a virus that spreads both pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic patients. We've never seen a virus that what we call expression, or how easy it is to see. When you saw someone with SARS, you knew it. When you saw someone with MERS, you knew it. When you all see someone with the flu, you know it. 100% of people with the flu have symptoms. But we've never seen anything like this, which is what allows it to evade us, allows it to spread. If either SARS or MERS, those 5th and 6th coronaviruses, if they had the ability to spread the way this did, we would have seen 1/5 of the world's population decimated. There's no way around it. So we're lucky that this actually, it has only a 1 to 2% mortality rate, because if it had been SARS or if it had been MERS, most of us would not be here right now. That would have been the movie Contagion, and we would have seen, when you have a virus that has 33% mortality rate, that means 1 in 3 people that get it die. And that's what MERS had the potential to do to us.
Ooh, that's stunning. I had to take a deep breath on that one right there, because that's amazing to me. Joseph, what's your question tonight?
Sure. Many of our congregants know that I did actually have and survive COVID-19, thank God. I do have a pre-existing condition that we manage medically and by prayer and lifestyle choices.
You wore me out. You just wore me out. I prayed that week, man. Like never before.
Nobody wanted me to get it, because everybody knows. I testify my full health history to our church all the time. So you all know the things that I've dealt with. So as a person who has recovered from it, I understand that I have some antibodies. And I just want to kind of know, by comparison to what my body did, what will the vaccine do? So a person like me that survived, do I also need the vaccine? And is that immunity any longer? Does it last for any longer than what my body did, thank the Lord, by nature?
That's a very, very good question. Not an easily answerable question, but I'm going to try. As I mentioned, everyone is going to come in contact with this spike protein on this coronavirus one way or another. either through vaccine or natural infection. So you're gonna, if you survive, as you did, as I did, I was sick, I was out for 3 weeks, really bad illness with COVID-19 this summer. If you've survived, then yes, your body is going to develop immunity. But what I think one of the misconceptions is what does immunity mean? And that's not a simple answer. Because most will refer to the antibodies and they say, well, the studies show that antibodies go away after 90 days. Antibodies are only part of immunity. B cells and T cells are other parts of the immunity that are as important or more important because it's the B cells that make the antibodies, okay? And so what happens that even if I could do a graph and say, okay, you get infected, your body makes one type of antibody, it drops down and it starts to make this other one. You're gonna hear it in the news called IgG antibody. That stays up, but then it starts to drop down. So what happens is that over time, that antibody that's circulating in your blood is like, all right, enemy's gone, we can kind of go away. But your body has what we call memory T cells and memory B cells. These are other cells. The only two cells I'm going to talk about, T and B. Well, they stick around. They don't go anywhere. And they just kind of hang out in the bloodstream and like, nah, you know what, antibody, you go take you relax. I'm going to hang out and I'm going to watch out and I'm going to hang out forever. I'm never going anywhere. And when it's time for me to die, I'm going to make another copy of myself and die. And then that version of me is going to hang out forever. So what happens is that even after the antibodies go away, when your body comes in contact with SARS coronavirus 2 again, immediately it's going to have a reaction within the 12 to 24 hours. And an example of that is me. I had COVID-19 in July. 150 days later, I got shot one of my vaccine. And within 12 hours, I felt just like, I believe that was Jinu. Yeah. I felt just like her. It felt like the same day of having SARS-CoV-2 or having COVID-19. Headaches, fever to 101, body aches, muscle aches, chills. And I'm saying within 12 to 24 hours, I started to feel that. So what does that mean? Well, again, after 150 days, my antibody should have been gone, right? But my immune system was still there. It saw that protein, got it, and then within 24 hours, it was done. And so that's similar to what happens whether you have antibodies or an immune system, again, B cells, T cells, and antibodies towards the entire virus from infection, or whether you have T cells, B cells, and antibodies towards the spike protein from vaccination. Even if those antibodies wane over time, the body's T cells and B cells are there, and they're going to immediately, if your body comes in contact with the virus, it's going to work, it's going to reactivate, and it's going to neutralize that virus. So the last part I like to say in explaining immunity is immunity isn't a special cloak that hangs over you that prevents the virus from getting in you. In order for immunity to work, your body has to see the virus. So yes, it's possible that you could still, someone's got SARS-CoV-2 and they come by and say, hey, how you doing? Achoo, and they sneeze in your face. That virus is going to try to get inside of you and say, all right, party time. But now it's inside of you and all of a sudden your immune system is like, nope, we've seen you before. And out of nowhere, within 24 hours, the immune system goes. And what happens? Virus starts backpedaling like a quarterback. It's like, all right, time to get out of here. Got to go, right? And within days, you're not going to have that bad reaction, that a long, extended 3-week reaction that I had the first time your body sees it, because your immune system, your T cells, B cells, antibodies are all going to be there ready for the fight. And that's what immunity means. So it's not just one part. It's when we talk about immunity, we're talking about the body having a whole set of tools ready to fight off the virus when it sees it again. And that's a big point. I want to hopefully that I was able to kind of drive that home a little bit.
Yes. And being a pastor, I have to add a scripture right here. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. The way God made the human body, it is amazing. But let me ask you this. Is it possible to, maybe if you don't get it again, but you can still spread it to other people?
So that's a good question. And that ties into what I was just mentioning in terms of, remember I said, you've got your protection, right?
Yeah.
So the virus gets inside of you, it tries to start setting up shop,
yeah,
but it can't. Your body starts to neutralize it, but it's already trying to replicate and set up shop. So during that time, we essentially think you could possibly turn into what we call an asymptomatic spreader. And that's why we're still recommending, even if you get the vaccine, even if you had COVID-19, continue to wear your mask, continue to wash your hands, continue to socially distance, because this virus is so, we call it sticky, so infectious, and it wants to jump on something and start replicating quickly. And if, even though it might not be able to cause full disease in you and get inside, replicate, set up shop, because your body has the immunity to fight it off, you could possibly still spread it to others. And so that ties into, if you actually hear the complicated language when they talk about Moderna and Pfizer, they say it has 94, 95% efficacy in preventing SARS-CoV-2 infection, which means still probably a 5% chance you're going to get it. But then they mention 100% efficacy in preventing severe COVID-19. And that brings to the last point I want to make, and that one of the other videos that I did is I wanted to make sure that I broke it down to have folks understand. And I put it into a way that a lot of people can recognize. HIV is a virus, AIDS is a disease, okay? SARS-CoV-2 is a virus, COVID-19 is a disease. And so it's possible for you to have SARS-CoV-2 infection and not develop into full-blown severe COVID-19. And I don't think a lot of news outlets do a good enough job of really driving that home to have patients understand. Pretty much someone that's SARS-CoV-2, but they're asymptomatic, they never had COVID-19. They didn't have the full disease and the respiratory failure and all of that. So that's the difference between the two. So you, even having the vaccine, or even if you've had the virus, you could possibly still get, again, infected again, but not really have any symptoms from it. These vaccines are preventing you from developing severe COVID-19.
Wow. I love how you break it down, because you make it so plain. I feel like I'm a doctor now. I mean, I know I'm not, and I'm going to stay in my lane, but I'm telling you, I feel like I'm a doctor. Chris Baker, you got a question for us today?
Yes, Dr. Brady. Yes, Dr. Buddy. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna go like in a different direction. As an African American, I hear a lot of people, a lot of my peers are saying, "Man, you know what? I'm skeptical about this. I don't know. I don't trust the government. I don't know what they're putting in this stuff. I'm gonna let this first, round pass, and I'm gonna see, if somebody's gonna grow an extra toe or something like that." I'm just being real. Just the conversation that people are saying. I wanted to see if you can kind of speak to that skepticism, because it is real. People are like, I just don't trust it. I don't know. Even though we're seeing the facts and we're seeing the data and we are seeing that people are dying as a result of this disease. What can you say to that, Doctor?
I like to first acknowledge that skepticism is very real. It's understood. And I'll be totally honest, it's partially deserved, right? Some of the things that our medical community have done to people of color in America, not just talking about things like the Tuskegee experiment, which lasted for 40 years, sanctioned by the government from 1932 to 1972. I mean, that's appalling enough, right? And yes, there were a lot of changes that went into place that will try to basically prevent that from ever happening again. But I can go back to a study from 2016 that showed that medical students and residents, as recent as 2016, have severe misconceptions about African Americans, our pain tolerance, things like we have different nerve endings in our skin that make us not need pain medication as much. This is real. This is a published study that was in the Proceedings for the National Academy of Sciences, the University of Virginia. It may have been embarrassing to them, but it was an eye-opener to the fact that there are levels of, we call it, you don't want to say necessarily racism, but there are bias and prejudice that exist in the minds of healthcare workers that affect people of color. So that's just giving credence and validation to the fears that people have. What I What I then try to say, specifically if we're talking about to the African American population, is I try to explain the why behind why are we dying at a higher rate if we're just talking about SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19. Well, we can start with the fact that individuals of darker skin are severely vitamin D deficient. So vitamin D, and I did a whole video on this, is probably the most important vitamin for our body to fight off an infection, specifically a viral infection. Those T cells and B cells that I mentioned, when they're normal and they're resting, they don't have vitamin D receptors. As soon as they get activated, the cell starts making vitamin D receptors, looking for vitamin D, because it needs vitamin D in order to function normally. So because of darker skin, we don't use the sunlight as well to convert vitamin D2 to vitamin D3, a usable form. So if all of us on here right now were to take a look at our vitamin D and we're not on vitamin D supplements, most of us are probably vitamin D deficient. Darker skin individuals are going to be even more vitamin D deficient. But part of that is because why? We're indoors, it's the winter, not in the sun, so you're listening there. So that's important. And I'm not just harping on vitamin D just to do it. That's important to understand, because when we looked at COVID-19, we saw that individuals that were vitamin D deficient had 4 times the mortality of COVID-19 compared to those that had normal, adequate levels of vitamin D. Well, when you look at the African American population, we have 2.7 times the mortality of Caucasians. There's a correlation there. Of all the correlations, you can look at everything else, you can look at obesity, you can look at everything, and they do have some correlations. But this vitamin D is so important. So I start off by telling all individuals, but definitely the Black community, I want you taking zinc, vitamin C, and vitamin D. I haven't promoted big pharma. I'm not telling you to go out and buy pharmaceuticals. I'm telling you to take natural minerals and vitamins that are going to give your body a fighting chance, whether or not you get the vaccine. That part is important. And I think that if we have more individuals to talk to patients about preventative health, instead of trying to push one thing or another, education and preventative health can do a long way to building trust in the Black community to say, you know what, that sounds like something that makes sense. And I think that's what I've really tried to push my mission to do over the last 6 to 9 months is educate, educate, educate.
That's so great. We're gonna wrap up here in just a moment, but Travis, you got one final question for us?
Well, my question kind of shifted a little bit just because of what you just shared, and I think we should probably, in our pastor's word, own the moment and take in this moment. Where do we, in your estimation, where do you see us going with this coronavirus? Do you see the coronavirus, the SARS, morphing into something else? Where do you see the virus, our prevention? Where do you see us as a nation? Where do you see us in the world? And that may be a broad spectrum, but where do you see us going as it relates to the vaccine and this virus?
It's a really good question. I'll try to be succinct. My wife always tells me, you talk too much. You need to shorten it up. So I'll try to be succinct. Very good question for this reason. So let's say if we're talking about where do we see us going with SARS-CoV-2 and with COVID-19? Luckily for us, as a family, the coronaviruses themselves, they don't mutate crazily the way something like HIV or even influenza does. The reason we need a flu vaccine, a different flu vaccine every year, is because on the surface of the influenza virus, they've got these 2 proteins, hemagglutinin, neuraminidase. But there's like 16 versions of hemagglutinin and 23 versions of neuraminidase, and they all go and swap from pig to bird. And so every year, the flu version that we see is completely different from the last one. That's a normal process, antigenic shift, antigenic drift that happens. Coronaviruses don't do that. Slow mutations, slow. But more importantly, this spike protein that you keep hearing about, that's a protein on the outside of the coronavirus that binds to our ACE2 receptors. That's how it gets into our cells. It has to maintain a certain look and shape, even if all of its mutation, because if the virus mutates and the spike protein doesn't bind to ACE2, the virus is going to die. So that's going to be preserved. And that's why we built these vaccines towards the spike protein. Because when your body sees that spike protein, it's not just breaking it up and making one antibody. It's chopping that protein up into thousands and thousands of pieces, and each individual piece gets a separate special antibody. So your body's making thousands of different types of antibodies to the different portions and broken up pieces of that spike protein. So even if there's a mutation here, there, 2 mutations, 3 mutations, 5, 6, those mutations aren't going to be enough to overcome the thousands of different antibodies to different parts of that spike protein. So you're still going to get some of them that are going to function and neutralize that. So that's the part that I'll say, that's the good part. That's the design that went into, that's why we've been studying this, because again, coronavirus has been around for a long time. Studying these and understanding coronaviruses themselves gave us a heads up in terms of how to focus making these vaccines. Yeah. That's the good part. The sad part is what we've talked about and what I've talked about earlier are the mortality. What we didn't talk about is something else we call morbidity. That is how people get sick and the long-lasting problems. Because for me and my son, we have this competition on who can stay under the water longer when we're in the pool, right? There was a time when I couldn't beat him when I had SARS-CoV-2 infection, when I had COVID-19, even after I recovered past the quarantine time. I couldn't beat him. He was lasting longer than me. That's how bad my lungs were. Right now, my lungs still aren't the same. I probably have permanent fibrosis in my lungs because I had such a difficult time battling COVID-19. I'm fortunate because there are people that have lost their sense of taste and smell forever, and it may never come back. Those of us that had COVID-19 and we lost it for 2 weeks, that's nothing compared to 9 months. I've got at least 20 patients right now that I take care of that have no sense of taste and smell. So now you start dealing with the depression, the weight loss, the malnutrition that comes just from not having taste and smell because nothing you eat or taste smells good anymore. That's just that one comorbidity. Then you've got the problems with kidneys, the problems with liver, neurological disease. We're going to be dealing with SARS-CoV-2 and with COVID-19 for decades. This will become the new public health problem over the next couple of decades as we start to deal with the fallout and the long-term comorbidity associated with COVID-19. And then we pray that we don't get another pandemic virus that hits us again anytime soon.
Jesus, that's exactly right. And so let me ask one question. Tanisha or Jinu or Dr. Drummond, any of you, how often will we have to take this? I know for a flu, we take it annually. Is this vaccine going to be something that we have to take annually as well?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that we're still trying to research to find out if we're going to have to do this vaccine kind of like we do the flu vaccine. Doctor, back me up on that and with that information, but I think we're still in the research phase of it. We're still collecting data to figure out if this is a vaccine that we'll have to take, kind of like a series. We do have series shots that we already take, our MMR vaccines, those types of vaccines. So we're not completely sure if this is going to be a vaccine that will require series dosage.
Yeah, I agree with Tanisha. I think that we're still trying to figure out what that means in terms of are we going to need more? I mentioned earlier that the good thing is that it doesn't mutate a lot, but let's just say it does. One thing I do like to say, because I've read up dozens and dozens of papers on this synthetic modified mRNA technology. The great thing is, if it does, we won't need to go back through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials because we know that it's safe. We know that the technique works. We can just take the little strip of mRNA that I told you about. We pull the version out right now. We put the new version in that, has the new mutations. And then just like that, you pump it out and you get new vaccine, similar to how we do for influenza. So if we have to do that, I think we'll be in a good shape. But right now we're hoping and praying that we don't.
Yeah. Wow, guys, I can't hold y'all any longer because you've been so kind tonight to just give us your time. And we know that you are all so very busy. And so we just want to thank you and you didn't talk too much. You could just keep talking because I feel very enlightened. And I just want every person that's listening to us tonight to understand this is something that everybody has to choose on their own. It's a decision that you have to make. I know some people are concerned about, well, what if I take it now? Where am I going to be 15 years from now? Is it going to affect me in a negative way? And there's so many legitimate questions, but at the rate that we are seeing us on the TV every day, the people that we are losing, loved ones that we are losing, I for one am like, I'm ready to roll up my sleeve and say, give it to me, because anything I can do to help stop this spread, that's what I want to do. Although I totally understand how real some of these fears are to so many people. But as a pastor, I pray for you and pray that you get a peace in your spirit. And I really want to do this again sometime, if y'all will come back and join me, if we haven't wore y'all out too much. But I pray for you. Thank you for serving our communities. Thank you for serving people. Thank you for every hand that you held when their family members couldn't get there. Thank you just for, all the times that you had to go into the hospital, into the clinic, and walk out and go back to your house where you might have children, you might have family, and those days that you were wondering, God, am I going to transmit any of this to my house? Thank you for staying true to the task, the assignment, and loving humanity enough to help meet us at our point of need. Thank you, Pastor Travis. Thank you, Pastor Chris and Tina. We're seeing you on there. Tanisha, Jinu, Joseph, Dr. Robert Drummond. I appreciate you so much. And I'm going to call you back again. Why don't you just move to Dallas? We'll all be your clients, okay? We'll all be your patients. But I pray for you guys. Are all your minds clear? I'm a pastor. You got to say that. Are all minds clear before we sign off tonight? But thank you all for joining us. And we're just praying for you. Pray for these frontline workers. Pray for their strength. Pray for their mind. Pray for their gifts to even be further stirred up. And we just pray, not just for America, but we pray for people who are globally affected by this pandemic. We love you from the Potter's House, North Dallas. We're praying for you. Be blessed.